Right, let's just dive right into this explainer. Today we're looking at how a massive geopolitical trade crisis and a really intense looming infrastructure cliff are fundamentally upending the entire North American waste management paradigm. Seriously, it's a wild story. We're talking about a massive physical problem where chaotic matter is literally being dematerialized into high-value data right at the edge of the supply chain. We've got a super packed agenda for this one. We're going to map the entire journey, starting with the ticking border crisis and Ontario's capacity cliff, all the way to building what's called the Sentient Bridge. From there, we'll look at the actual workflow, turning matter into data, why that data is the ultimate product, and how it all secures the circular bioeconomy.
All right, jumping right into part one. We really have to start by setting the board here and understanding the sheer physical scale of what's going on with this border crisis.
Just look at this staggering number, 3.46 million tons. That is the amount of municipal solid waste Ontario exports across the border to Michigan every single year. It is a relentless daily river of heavy haul trucks just moving massive amounts of trash.
And when you look at it visually, it really hits home. That single flow of Canadian trash accounts for over 14% of all waste disposed of in the entire state of Michigan. It's a massive, critical trade pipe tightly connecting these two economies.
But here's where it gets tense. This massive trade flow is currently facing a total regulatory pincer movement leading into 2026. Because of shifting U.S. trade policy in Washington, this corridor is staring down a dreaded August 19th deadline. We're talking about a 50% U.S. Section 338 tariff that absolutely threatens to slam the border shut on Canadian wood products. Without a bulletproof USMCA or CUSMA trade exemption, exporters are looking at massive, devastating financial penalties.
So that brings us to part two. Because if the border gets too expensive, the obvious question is, why not just keep the waste in Canada, right?
Well, here is the harsh physical reality. Ontario is staring down an absolute total capacity cliff. Projections show domestic landfills reaching total exhaustion by 2034. There's just nowhere for it to go. This scarcity is exactly what's driving rapid provincial political maneuvering like Premier Doug Ford's Bill 5, which aims to bypass standard environmental assessments to fast-track new landfills explicitly because of that looming U.S. tariff threat.
And this explains the extreme economic arbitrage that's keeping this corridor alive right now. Look at this gap. The Greater Toronto Area tipping fee floor sits at nearly $190 per ton. Contrast that with Michigan, where current rates have been as low as 36 cents a ton. Even if Michigan bumps it up to a proposed $5, it's vastly cheaper. But if those 50% tariffs hit, this entire economic model just completely collapses.
Which naturally leads us to part three. Because standard disposal models simply cannot survive these intersecting 50% tariffs and severe infrastructure constraints.
So, we need a technological solution. And that brings us to the core thesis of an operation called 95 Wood. They've architected what they call a sentient bridge. The whole idea is to convert mixed, contaminated, totally chaotic demolition waste into pristine, certifiable feedstock provenance. They aren't just moving wood. They are creating absolute industrial clarity right at the messy edge of the supply chain.
How do they actually do this? Well, they operationalized an incredibly advanced edge AI tech stack right on a smartphone. We're talking a Google Pixel 11 Pro running Android 17, utilizing a light RT AI stack, Tensor Silicon, and a Titan M2 hardware root of trust. By putting this immense, secure computing power directly in the hands of the driver, they completely remove the need for a traditional fatigued human compliance officer.
And the absolutely crucial metric here is the sub-second rule. The AI model has to complete its compliance classification in under 500 milliseconds, that's under half a second, done locally right at the edge with zero cloud dependence. That means legally binding environmental and tariff compliance decisions are made instantly without slowing the driver down for even a second.
Let's move on to part 4 and actually see how this matter is turned into data in the real world.
Because you might be wondering, how does this actually play out in the mud of a chaotic demolition yard? Well, this workflow is a total masterclass in dematerialization. It starts with a standard request for quote, moves straight to instant on-device AI classification, triggers a cryptographic hold to seal, and finally outputs court-admissible PDF documentation.
Step 3 is honestly where the magic happens, the cryptographic hold to seal. Basically, a simple 2-second haptic press on the screen triggers that Titan M2 chip to lock the exact GPS coordinates, the timestamp, the specific AI model version, and the load classification into a tamper-evident audit record. It literally seals the fate of that physical waste, transforming it into pristine, queryable digital data before the truck even leaves the yard.
All right, part 5.
And this is the massive paradigm shift of this entire explainer.
This right here is what you really need to take away from this. 9.5 Wood's true value isn't about moving physical wood anymore. The value shifts entirely to the DMRV, the digital measurement, reporting, and verification data. Let me repeat that. The data, not just the wood, is the actual product. This decoupled digital data is what completely bypasses that 50% tariff wall under a USMCA exemption. It drops regulatory levies and shields operators from those massive legacy liabilities.
And just to put that into perspective, by securing the lowest legal regulatory rate right at the bin, that exact subsecond classification translates to a staggering savings of over $1,500, $1,533 to be exact, per single mothership load. When you multiply that across the millions of tons moving through this corridor, it completely rewrites the unit economics of waste disposal.
Which brings us to our final section. Let's look at how this scales to the international climate asset market and the circular bioeconomy.
The final output of this entire SaaS application service, these dematerialized, cryptographically signed PDFs, acts as the ultimate passport. They instantly satisfy customs agents with a USMCA Shield Certificate of Origin. They provide electronic manifests for environmental ministries. And critically, they meet the extremely high purity demands of carbon removal registries like Puro.Earth.
It perfectly sums up what the source material states. The 905 Wood digital refinery is the sentient bridge between chaotic construction waste and the high purity requirements of the biocarbon market. It proves unequivocally that securing Ontario's industrial leadership in the Canadian circular bioeconomy relies entirely on this digital certificate. The data is the ultimate high-margin asset.
I want to leave you with this provocative thought to chew on. If a standard smartphone can enforce complex international trade tariffs and environmental compliance directly at the edge in a muddy yard in under half a second, what other chaotic physical industry is about to be completely dematerialized by data? Keep questioning how everyday tech is silently rewriting the physical world around us. Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.